Welcome to the Paddle and Fin podcast, the Bass Fishing for Noobs segment, where we try to improve our skills as an angler by learning new techniques or improving the ones we already know. I'm your host, Ryan Milford. Welcome back to the Paddle and Fin podcast, the Bass Fishing for Noobs segment. I'm your host, Ryan, and tonight we have Brian the Killer Schiller.
I'm glad I'm not toes anymore.
You thought I was going to say it, didn't you?
I was waiting for it. Oh, man. Cool.
Yeah, me and Brian are going to talk tonight. You know, I've been going through a slump here lately, trying to get a hold of winter fishing. And, you know, Brian's went through some slumps through the year, especially in the tournament scene.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, trying to losing focus of, what's really important and everything. So we just wanted to talk about that. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to going through slumps with fishing and everything. And, it's something that's, really frustrating. Like with me, I started the year not with a lot of expectations because I hadn't had a lot of luck in the past, and then I've done pretty good this year, and like compared to my past years.
Sure.
And I felt like I was actually getting somewhere, and I was getting the hang of it. And then this past 2 months or maybe month and a half, something like that, I can't seem to find any fish. And
you hit a wall, man. You hit a wall.
And so that's been super frustrating for me. And like I told you guys, that one day, like the last time I went fishing, it was New Year's Eve, and I was like, anybody want to buy some tackle? Because I think I'm done.
It's funny, man. Like I've said that so many times. It's ridiculous, Like and I think it's not only relatable in fishing, but anything, right? Like,
yeah,
I get frustrated just editing the podcast sometimes, and I'm like, why am I doing this? I think I was talking to Josh the other night, and I was telling you before we started, I had some lag issues with my computer and stuff like that, and I'm like, I'm done. I'm just done. I'm sick of doing this, and it's just that pure frustration raging out, man. But like you said, like I don't think I've told you this personally, but it's kind of cool to see how far you have come this year. I know just getting to know you through when you started up bass fishing for noobs on your own, and I think it was your first episode you went through, you were talking about you pretty much could name all the fish you caught, right?
yeah.
And this year you've blown all your years combined out of the water, and you've caught some personal bests. You figured some stuff out, and things are starting to click. And I know how this goes too, man. Like I said, you just hit that wall, and you're like, I'm done. I'm selling everything. Like, what the hell? Like, I had this figured out, and now it changes. But I think
too much time and money into it.
Right. And that's the thing. Like, and that's with any sport or hobby. Like, you invest some money, you invest a ton of time trying to get good at that hobby, because obviously you enjoy it and you just want to get better at it. And it gets super frustrating. And I think so many people, especially in fishing, what we do, a lot of people can relate. Like you said, my tournament season kind of like took a dive at the end of the year because I lost focus. So I think there's some key points in here, man, that just talking from our experiences and what we do to change that up is going to help some folks out for sure.
Yeah, man. I know with me, one thing that kind of helped that last day whenever I was real frustrated and, talking to y'all about it, y'all helped me out. Like, y'all were like, don't give up and, encourage me. And then one thing you said, just to kind of sum it up, you were like, look, just do you,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
ma- and that's basically what you said. It's a little longer than that, but that's basically what you say is, do you. And it got me thinking because signed up for a monthly tournament right now with
Yeah.
KBFTN. And with that, there's only like two lakes that you're allowed to fish on.
Okay.
And one of those is Percy Priest Lake. But you're allowed to fish the Stones River that runs into there up to a certain point.
Okay. Yep.
And so that's where I've been at because Stones River, it's like the spot that I've been trying to go to is like 2 miles from where I caught my personal best largemouth. It's like a mile or two down the river from where I caught my personal best largemouth. And so like on that river, I've started to feel pretty confident. But right now it's at winter pool and I'm used to fishing around wood structure
Yeah.
and all that's up on the bank. And so, you know, I'm I don't even know if the river's a good place to fish right now. With it being cooler and not having that wood structure and all that. But you got me thinking when you were saying, do you? It's like this ain't even where I want to be, where I want to fish right now. I'm only fishing here at the moment because I'm part of this online tournament.
Sure.
And like, because I've been wanting to, we got a place called Williamsport here. It's ran by the TWRA,
Okay.
and yeah, it's public, but you got to pay like I think it's like $5 or $6 to get a permit to fish there.
Okay.
And I've been wanting to go out there because I ain't been out there since spring, and I was like, uh, I could go out there and fish where I want to fish, where the water level's going to be up because they don't really have like a much of a drain off,
Okay.
so the water's probably going to be up, and then I could go Duck River. When Josh Stewart was on my segment, I was talking to him about that, and like he got me, stoked up to hit Duck River because Duck River is like 2 miles from my house,
Okay. Okay.
and so like I I mean it's now it's high right now, and it's moving a little fast, so I don't know if that's really where I need to be right now, but I ain't even been to really check it out to see like does this look like a safe place I could fish, but I do want to fish there. So I guess what I'm basically getting at is I was fishing for the tournament, not for myself. Does that sound right?
Yeah, yeah, I get that, man. So that's the thing with tournaments, man. It forces you out of your element, so to speak, right?
Which
And
ain't necessarily a bad thing. I'm
no, 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 no.
100%.
I think it's a good thing. Um, but I think the thing that really offset you was because you made a comment and you were like, I'm in this tournament, I can't even put up one fish.
Yeah.
So to me, when you made that statement, you were more worried about putting fish on the board and seeing your name on that leaderboard than you were fishing, right? So I think that's the key because that's what happened to me. And I'm talking from experience. I could be totally wrong, but if I had to break it down psychologically, what you were probably thinking was, man, I just want to see my name on this leaderboard and I don't want to skunk. Nobody likes skunking, right? We all feel like
Yeah.
failures when we do that, right? Totally get it. Totally get it. I feel the same way, like I've, and I think I told you when that conversation took place, I'm like, I think I'd rather skunk than fall one 12-inch fish short. And I'm
Yeah.
still like not over that, dude. That was at Mark Twain. Um, and there was a lot of factors that went into that, right? And I really elaborated because I think it was like a 5-hour drive home by myself.
Just
There
sitting there
was
dwelling on it.
Oh yeah, and there was points in the vehicle where I legit like screamed at the top of my lungs and like punched my steering wheel and like told myself I was a flippin' idiot and like all this stuff, right? And I was like, woosah, like Bad Boys 2. Start rubbing my ears, woosah, calm down, But I'm like, I think you got to take and I think, listening to your, I think it was the episode with Jody Queen, right? Where I think it was him. It could have been somebody else that was recently on the podcast, but they were like, take and learn from every experience on the water, whether it be yourself, another angler that's super experienced, a beginner, like try to, and I think I've said that before on the podcast. Like I go out on the water, I try to learn at least one new thing, right? Fishing's a never ending learning process. So, with what you were saying is, you went back to what produced before in that river, right? You were kind of trying to go back and recreate that. And I think the big struggle that we all have as fishermen is we always have that crutch, that fallback, whether it be a spot that is always produced for us, a bait that's always worked well. The moon was in the right phase and you always catch fish on that, right? Well, let's remember, this is fishing, not catching. And fish change and adapt to different environments and things like that. Like for me, like right now, like the one thing when this whole conversation was going down, I was like, man, I suck at winter fishing. I don't even know where to tell this kid to go fish. You know what I mean? Like if I had to break down the 4 seasons, like the worst season for me is absolutely winter. Like I struggle with it. And there's like, I've had a few opportunities where I probably could have gone out fishing, but I'm like, man, I'm afraid that I'm not going to catch fish. I'm going to put up that goose egg, so I don't go, which is bad. I'm not saying do that, but it would force me out of my element, like you were in this tournament situation. But I think the big thing is you just got to have fun. You just got to be out there to enjoy it. I know a couple of the guys in the chat were like, remember when we started fishing, man? Like, that's why you're out there. It's not to cash a check or, take third place or be in the top 10. You're just out there to have fun. The tournament is a bonus. And I think if you look at some of the most successful anglers in the kayak community, that's what they do. They don't worry about all the crap. They don't let that get to them. They just focus on going out fishing and having a good time. It is hard, man. I mean, that is like my biggest mental struggle when it comes to tournament fishing. And, that 12-inch fish, had I caught that would have cashed me a check. I think I would have been in like 7th place. I would have beat Sam Jones in AOI. Like I was thinking about stuff like that. Rookie of the year, because I was like kind of in the contention at that point in time. And I let all that stuff affect me and my decision making in my fishing. I wasn't fishing. I was focused on all this other stuff. But I mean, this can even be when you're out fun fishing, right? Like, okay, for instance, Josh was out here Labor Day weekend, and I'm slamming bass left and right in front of him. Josh is hooking up just as much, but every time he would get the fish to the surface, it would jump and spit the hook. If you watch the season 3 trailer, the guy in his kayak slamming his rod down, that was Josh out of pure frustration after losing his 20th fish. And that's one thing I will say about Josh, right? Like, and if you talk to Josh Eldridge, he's a good dude. But he's just focused on having a good time on the water. Whether that be hanging out with a buddy, catching a bunch of fish, or just enjoying the surroundings while he's on the water. And as frustrated as he got, he kept fishing. Went through that whole mental thing, and we even talked about it. I'm like, dude, I think you're jack jawing that hook a little too hard, bro. I think he was setting the hook so hard he was ripping a hole in the bass's mouth, and when he jumped, the hook just fell out.
I remember y'all talking about that.
But that's the thing, right? He kept going. He didn't give up. There was a time where Josh really wanted to give up when I caught a bass out from underneath his kayak. He was mad that I mentioned this on the other podcast, so I'm mentioning it again. But even still, he was like, "Really, bro? Really? Like, I'm done." But he kept fishing. He was just joking around. So it's funny, man. Like, I've been looking at him lately and what he does as kind of like a driving force on like staying positive and moving forward. Um, you just got to enjoy that time out on the water. And I mean, your first couple of tournaments, dude, are going to be nerve wracking. You're just going to be like, you're going to notice like you're thinking about catching fish and like, all right, when I get a fish, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to get the fish uploaded, I got to just breathe, bro. Because like I don't know about you, but like one thing that I find about me, like usually my first like 4 casts in a tournament, I'm like casting and ripping that stuff back in, and I'm like, whoa, hit the brakes, bro. Like, what are you doing? Like, calm down, breathe, do your normal presentation, do your normal cast. Like, you just feel like you're in such a rush and in a hurry to, get those fish and get them on the board. And I think if you just calm down and just focus on what you're doing and you're fishing, like, it's going to help you out for sure.
One thing that I like with me in this monthly tournament, my point of view compared to like yours, with that tournament with you, I don't think I would feel as bad about, not not getting a limit or even not even catching a fish in a day tournament or like a live tournament, I guess it's called.
Yeah.
Because it's like you can brush it off like, okay, I just had a bad day. Well,
Yeah.
this is a month-long tournament. It's like, dang, you couldn't even get one good day in a month. But one thing I did do is after all that, I looked on Tourney X and was just seeing what people had, and like half the field, I think even now, like only half the field has a fish.
Yeah. A
Not a,
fish.
and the month's almost over,
Yeah.
and nobody, as last time I looked, nobody had a limit.
Okay.
I think 2 people had 4 fish. The rest had, maybe 3 or 2 or 1,
Yeah.
and then almost half the field, nothing.
Yeah.
So either people just ain't been able to get out there, or they're having the same struggles I am. But you're talking about when I was talking to Jody Queen. Well, something I figured out from him is the area I was fishing, I was doing it wrong.
Okay.
And because I was telling him like, yeah, I'm up against this rock wall that's like 15, 20 foot right off the wall,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm throwing chatterbait, because it's muddy water, thinking they'd bring it to him. He's like, man, that right there is crankbait heaven. You
Yeah.
need to be throwing a crankbait. And I'm like, I, 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 and I think a lot of that had to do with, I've been wanting to try to dial in with a crank or with uh,
Chatterbait.
a chatterbait,
Yeah.
and get to where I can catch fish with it. So I was so focused on that I wasn't really, paying attention. What should I really be throwing here?
Right. Yeah, I mean that's a good point, dude. Like, wintertime, obviously I've read a bunch of stuff. Well, I mean, my situation up here in the north is a little different than you in
Yeah,
Tennessee. And I'm not saying it doesn't get cold or it doesn't snow in Tennessee, but um, we get ice on our lakes, so that really like our waters get super cold,
yeah,
which makes fish super lethargic. So trying to get them to bite and stuff, like, and that's the thing too, it's like you said, you wanted to dial in that chatterbait. I think the big question there is this the right time of year to be throwing that bait? I mean, to me personally, might tie on a chatterbait. But again, I'm by no means an expert with the chatterbait. I will be the first person to admit that. When I think like lethargic fish, I think finesse fishing, something really slow that's going to appease and the fish isn't going to have to really work or exert a bunch of energy to get that bait, right? Usually like a chatterbait, they're chasing that thing down. Crankbait, you can, crank a little slower and, fish just pop up, grab it, whatever. Same thing with a jerkbait. Like jerkbait is supposed to be, this is like the time of year to throw a jerkbait, and spring, you know. But they say when you're fishing that jerkbait in like cold water, like you do your twitches and then your pause. I forget who it was I was listening to. It might have been Tactical Bassin or somebody. They were like, I'll let my bait pause there for like a minute and a half before I twitch it again. Like that's some slow fishing. Like I don't know if I could stand that. So
Yeah.
when you're in that situation, that can make all the difference in the world. But if you don't have the patience, and that was one thing I wanted to bring up that Jody had mentioned in the last episode with you was, just have patience, just stay out there, stick it out, do what you need to do. And I think that's the one thing, right? So I was thinking about this today because I knew we were going to have this conversation tonight. Like, when you start fishing, usually it's, somebody's like, hey, you want to go fishing? And you have this awesome day, right? You catch a bunch of fish and then you're hooked. And then you go out and try doing it on your own. And then you're like, what happened? I thought this was like, I catch a fish every other cast. Like, and now I can't catch a single fish, right? And it gets super frustrating. So, I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, that's why we do this podcast, because there's guys and gals like us that hit these walls and we talk about it to kind of help everybody through it. So, I don't know. There's so much more information out there nowadays on like how to fish certain techniques. And that's the thing, man. Like your segment, the Bass Fishing for Noobs segment, is one of our most popular segments on the Paddle and Fin podcast. And I think that's because it's instructional, it's informative, it teaches folks how to do different things, right? And I think, like, I'll say this right now, I think that's why you've become such a better fisherman, right? Because like you're getting all this knowledge on a weekly basis, and then you're hitting the water and you're sitting there in your kayak, your little vibe kayak with your Barbie rod, and you're like,
Oh,
yo man, Jody
here we
Queen
go.
told me to do this, or Josh Stewart told me to do this, so I'm gonna try this, and you'll end up having some success, All right, I was kidding about the Barbie rod. I was just kidding, bro.
Yeah, man. It's actually Toy Story. So
Yeah.
but,
Oh, Toy Story rod. I like it. I need to get me one of them. I could probably catch a 12-inch fish with a Toy Story rod.
Maybe. You never know. But I lost train of thought. I was gonna go back. You're talking about water temperature and stuff.
Sure.
That last day I went out, it was New Year's Eve, and when I got on the water, I was feeling good because that water temp was like 54 degrees.
Oh yeah, I'd be.
And that was
it too.
That was warmer than it's been in like almost 2 months.
Yeah.
Like it's been around like 50, 51, and I was like, man, the water's warmed up a little bit. I bet they're going to be a little more active, and so I was feeling good that day. But
You're spoiled, man. I'd be lucky if I could find 34-degree water up here right now.
that's why I was telling Jody Queen, like part of me wants to like give y'all a hard time, like haha, I can I can go fishing, but then it's like, well, I'm still not catching fish, so not a whole lot to rub in their face.
Yeah, but still, man, you're on the water. That's the thing, right? You're still on the water having a good time, tearing it up. I mean, I'd love just to jump in the water and just get a line wet. I've even considered going down and floating the river because my home lake here, it's like it was totally froze, and guys were out ice fishing one weekend. I think that was right before Christmas, and then it warmed up Christmas week, and some of the ice melted, but all the shorelines were iced in, so I couldn't get out there. They're still iced in. Most of the smaller bodies of water out this way are all frozen up. The only thing that's open is the river. But I don't know,
And
man. Me and the river have a love-hate relationship.
and see, that kind of leads me to another thing I was wanting to talk about,
Yeah, man.
because I know me and you have talked about this a little bit. You know, I've been trying to figure out like deeper areas to fish, and but my fish finder ain't the greatest. It don't really show a whole lot of structure, and I'm still learning how to use it. So I don't really know where a whole lot of stuff is. And I know you've talked about like, with you, when the water freezes, y'all can like drag limbs out on the ice, and when it
Yeah,
when it
yeah.
melts, then it floats down, and then you pretty much know where that's at. And I don't have that, and so that's been a pretty frustrating too, like trying to figure out where in the
So
deep water fish are going to be hiding and what they're going to be around.
do you look at like navionics or anything like that for some of the bodies of water you're fishing?
I was for a little bit. Now I haven't really, but see, that's another thing is when I did use Navionics, it there wasn't a whole lot of stuff posted on there. Like I think there was like a couple spots where it's like a tree or rock or something like that, but
Sure,
not a whole
sure,
lot of
sure.
people have posted stuff from what I saw around here.
So, like, I know for me, like, right, like when I'm going to fish a new body of water, like for a tournament or something like that, I'll use a combination of Google Maps, satellite maps, and then the Navionics. Sometimes I'll bring my Garmin fish finder up here. I got, lake maps on there and stuff. But I think like with your setup with the depth finder you got, man, like the key with that is knowing your depths. Now, the second key to utilizing that, I think if I was in your position, this is how I'm talking it out. This may not work for everybody, but I would go on Navionics, I'd look at the body of water, look where the deep holes are, um, you know, deeper points, things like that, where I think fish would hold up, and then go out there. And you can even use a GPS on your phone to like get out where you're going, depending on if you have service. But then utilizing that depth finder, like that this should be X amount of feet, um, according to what Navionics says. Now, that the one thing with Navionics is that it changes all the time. Like you're talking about, I know some Tennessee um, reservoirs and stuff like that, they'll draw down to what's called winter pool. So that could be 5 feet, that could be 30, 40, 50 feet, down in the water column. So that's a little hard to figure out when you're dealing with that. Like I know when Jay and I fished, it wasn't Cherokee Lake in Tennessee. What the heck lake was that? We did the paddle and fin meetup out there. It was beginning of the year, and
Is
that
that
lake
when
was,
y'all were out towards Gatlinburg?
yeah. I forget what lake that is. It's part of the French Broad River system.
I'm not sure. I've never been out there fishing, but we
Um,
we can find it though.
yeah, I mean, either way, like that water was down like 40 feet, I want to say, something like that. I mean, it was quite a bit. And like where we launched the one day was usually underwater. Like we drove out onto this rocky like beach or whatever. And I mean, the water level had been down 30, 40, 50 feet.
Was it
But
Douglas?
yes, Douglas Lake. Um, so, you got to kind of figure that out. You got to do the math and whatever. But either way, you should still be able to figure out where the deeper holes are. I think what we could do, you and I, one time is jump on a Skype call like this. I could screen share and we can go over um, like reading a Navionics map and what I'm looking for. I know Sam and I had talked about doing one of those like as a video for like map study and stuff.
Yeah, that would be
Um,
awesome.
but Yeah, I think that would be key, man. Like, because that's the thing. You look at a map like that, sometimes like you don't necessarily comprehend what all those squiggly lines on the page looks like, or what that translates to. And I will say, like, I think you can pay for like an updated version of Navionics, where it gives you like a 3D style map. So you can actually see where these humps and things are. But, the one thing is that I will say that I've learned this a while ago, but, Navionics is a very broad description of what the lake bottom is. And especially this year, I ran that Garmin 93 SV, and that thing's got an option on it where it's called Quick Contour or something like that, and you can record the bottom of the lake as you're going around and remap the lake or the body of water you're on. So I kind of toyed around with that on my home lake, and I found humps and little crevices and stuff all over the place that I never knew were there and never showed up on our Navionics map.
You rich people and your fancy toys.
Oh, jeez, come on, man. I got that depth finder for like next to nothing. But it doesn't matter if you have that fancy toy. There's so many unique tools out there that you can use to kind of help, right? And try to relieve those frustrations. And I think that's a big thing. If you look at a lot of successful tournament anglers, so to speak, they do a lot of homework. Like I know, I forget, was it Sam Jones or maybe Alan Reed? I saw they were studying a map book the other day, put a post up, and the tournament ain't till like March or April. So it's like,
Are you talking about the NC?
I don't know what they were looking, what body of water it was. I just saw they had a lake map out, and I was like, Jesus, guys.
I was gonna say if they're studying for the national championship, like it might be worth it to go ahead. I mean, that's a lot of
Yeah,
out there.
yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like I know, JP. Shout out to JP, one of my Rocktown guys. He's been studying maps since like November for the NC. To try and prep that, and going back and watching old Bassmaster tournaments and looking at old tournament. I mean, a lot of guys dive into that. Some people don't buy into that. I'll look at, I don't go through usually and look at all that old stuff. I will usually look at the maps, look at satellite images, things like that. And you were mentioning like finding rocks and boulders and things like that. Usually when you're looking at a satellite map, depending on the water clarity, sometimes you can see that in the water. Sometimes you can see where the shoreline goes from gravel to like mud or sand. That might be an area I'd focus on, because usually what's on shore is what's going out off the edge of that, shoreline into the deeper part of the water there. So, I mean, there's some tips and tricks that definitely can play into that, but I don't know. I think we're getting off subject, but
Well, I was gonna say, I think that's a big reason why I was targeting that rock wall.
yeah,
I was like, if the rock wall's here, it was probably blasted out, so there's probably
sure,
rock underneath here. And my thought is, sun hits the rock gets warm, holds heat. The fish are
yeah,
probably going to be up close to it. So I was trying to put it together. I've gotten a lot
yeah,
better with that. We were talking about earlier. You say you feel like the podcast has really helped me, and I credit a lot of my success this year to this podcast and talking with all these different anglers and getting their
sure,
insights, and on top of that, I've watched, I can't tell you how many YouTube videos this year.
sure,
Trying to trying to get it down,
yeah,
and I do have a lot more knowledge. It's just
yeah.
putting that knowledge.
To use, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like one of those things, right? Like you always hear, I don't know, I might be dating myself saying this. You got book smart and street smart, you know? And if you're not a combination of the two, you're going to really struggle at certain things, you know? And I think that's just it. You got all the book smarts right now. Now you need the street smarts or the experience of using those book smarts to kind of gel it together. But I will say, like, when I heard you talking about, you know, the rock wall, and you went over there and you just had this feeling like there should be fish here, right? Like, I was like, dude, it's clicking with Milford. He's like zoning in, because I mean, excuse me, I haven't seen the body of water, but from what you described, I'd probably be in that same area, but throwing a different bait. You know what I mean? But
Well,
and that's the thing too, right? Like, so here's the thing too. Like, I think I see this happen with Jay Randall all the time. I always love using Jay as an example for this.
picking on Jay.
Always out fishing, right? And if it's him catching a bunch of fish, I'm like, hey man, what are you using? And he'll tell me, and immediately I'm digging in my tackle, trying to find something almost exactly the same or the exact same thing. I'll tie it on and I'll start catching fish. I'm catching a bunch of fish in front of Jay, and he's like, really? Another one? I'm like, yeah, dude. This, you know, Texas rig Senko is crushing it, dude. Green pumpkin, red flake. Here, you want a couple worms? No, man, I'm good. I'm just going to keep fishing this. You know? And then Jay won't catch any fish, but he's out there fishing, enjoying his time on the water. And I'm like, dude, why didn't you switch up? I offered you some worms. Yeah, well, you know, whatever. And he knows, like, he's stubborn like that, right? Because I think it goes back to like that spot where you've been 1,000 times before. It's always produced fish for you. And then the one time you show up, it's like ghost town, right? Not a fish to be found. So we just stay there and keep fishing it over and over and over because we've had success there. We've caught fish there. And it's like, come on, man, I've caught 50 fish out of this hole. There's got to be one down there. But one never bites at the end of the day. So I think the big thing is like us as fishermen, we got to quit being stubborn. Like you were fishing that spot, throwing the chatterbait. Nothing's hitting it. Nothing's hitting it. Nothing's hitting it. When do we as anglers go, this isn't working? I need to use a different bait, right? And change it up.
I will say that's not the only thing I used. I, I did change it up a little bit, but I
Damn
was
it, you're
mainly
ruining my example.
I was changing it up to other things that I don't really have a lot of experience with.
Sure.
Now, one thing that I did use that I've got experience with, I've caught like two fish off of, is a Ned rig.
Yeah.
I was trying it along that rock wall, and I was getting bites, but I think it was bluegill because there's a bunch of like tap 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 tap, and I try to set the hook and nothing.
Yeah, it's probably
So
bluegill.
yeah, it's
So
figures.
so with that being said, like, I would have shifted out a little deeper. Like, usually them bass are skirting the outside of where those gills are, right? In my experience, sometimes they're in them, feeding on them. But I mean, Ned rig would have been one of the things I tossed, no doubt. Like, that goes back to me talking about winter fishing. Like, winter fishing to me screams finesse fishing. Um, so it's not necessarily a bad thing, but that's the thing. Like, you know, the point I was getting at is a lot of times we as fishermen, we get so comfortable with a spot or a bait or something like that, and we'll fish it from sun up to sundown and not catch a fish and not change that bait out once. And that was a big thing for me the beginning of the season. And that was one of the things I lost grasp of.
I've been
Is
there too.
I at the beginning of the season I told myself, like, don't overfish a bait. Like, if it's not working, you got to change it up. You got to find something that's going to work, and this and that. Great success when I did that. Now, going back to the original story of Mark Twain, I fished the same, what, 2 baits all day. I had a bait tied on to a rod right next to me that everybody caught fish on all day, which was a Ned rig. Didn't throw the Ned rig once, but you know, I had caught fish earlier in the week on those 2 specific baits, and I stopped at those 2. And I kind of broke my rule where I didn't, I'd find as many different working baits as possible, throughout pre-fishing. So when it came down to tournament time, if the bite got tough, I knew what go-to baits I could use. And I was stuck with 2, and I ran out of options, and I never picked that rod up. And I probably could have caught my 12-inch fish.
Yeah. But I know exactly what you're talking about because, in my first several years of, trying to bass fish, I didn't have a whole lot of luck, but what I did have luck on was a jig.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so when I went out, I was throwing that all day, every day. And I mixed up a little bit, not a whole lot. And then this year, I know y'all love hearing me talk about whopper ploppers so much. So this year, my buddy's like, "Yeah, you need to try this." I heard about it on the radio, and I've got some, and they work good. So I didn't want to do it, but I did. And then I started getting fish on it. And so like I put the jig down, like, man, let me do. Well, then I didn't want to put the whopper plopper on, or put the whopper plopper down. So it's middle of the day in summertime, 100 degrees outside. I'm still throwing top water. And, that's probably the time I should have put it down and picked up the jig. But,
yeah, I mean, well, that's the thing, right? So I know I teased you a bunch about the whopper plopper, but there was kind of a thing behind that, right? Like I wanted to tease you to the point where like you're like, God damn it, I gotta quit throwing this thing, so that way these guys quit picking on me. But that was to open up a door for you to try something else. But I mean, hey, dude, like I said, like, all right, so whopper plopper works for you all the time, right? In that right time of year, like I'd have one tied on at all times, if I'm carrying multiple rods, just to throw in different areas and see if fish are biting on that topwater bite. But also at the same time, I'd have that jig on like you were talking about, and then I'd have something to cover like that middle water column, kind of like what Jody was talking about on the podcast with you, when he was talking about his 3 baits, I think it was. But that's the thing too. You got to remember that those fish move up and down in the water column. So, that's one thing I do when I'm on the water. Like, all right, jig's not working, move to the middle of the water column. That's not working, move to the top. If that's not working, we need to find a bar somewhere very close, something, But I mean, you gotta toy around, and that's the thing too. Like, each body of water is so different. Well, I shouldn't say that. A lot of bodies of water are similar, and I'm talking nationwide. I've fished coast to coast, freshwater, north to south, all the way up into Canada. Right. So if a clear lake in Canada, X, Y, and Z worked for me, theoretically, with the same water temps, conditions, stuff like that, usually it works on a clear body of water in Missouri. You know what I mean? There could be some subtle differences, forage, things like that. Same thing with like cloudy water, as far as like colors and bait styles and all that stuff goes. So, I mean, I think we get so caught up, like, or at least I did, where, all right, this is a new body of water. I got to find a whole complete different style of baits to throw here, right? Because it's going to be totally different than what it was back on my home lake. But then you sit there and think like, all right, well, the water is the same color as my home lake. The clarity is the same color as my home lake. This area over here looks like, an area in my home lake where I did good. Let's go check that out. And then I'll end up finding fish that way. I kind of try to relate, and I think that's the thing too, right? Like, sometimes all of us don't get a lot of time on the water, right? And I know, you got limited time on the water. I'm gonna have a lot of limited time on the water this year. Um, but when we have that limited time, you know, it's important to take mental note. Um, hey, this is what worked this day, and this is kind of like the area or type of area I fished, whether it be like a stump field or a gravel bottom, a weed line, in the weeds, punching or whatever. And then relate that to this next body of water over here that we're going to go to next weekend, you know? So I think that's the thing too, is when that's where I was originally going with this, is when you have a limited amount of time on the water, you want to have the most success on the water while you're out there, because otherwise you feel like you're wasting that limited amount of time, free time, when you're out there, right? So, I mean, that's the thing, man. It's I think we all get so caught up in catching fish, which, yes, rightfully so. That's why we're out there. But I think there's a lot more reasons to why we're out there than to why we're out there. It might be because your old lady drives you nuts and you want to have 3 hours of being able to think clearly. It may be, you just enjoy floating down a river and enjoying the scenery. It could be, I don't know, you're a secret bird watcher and you're really, taking photos of birds in the trees on the lake line. Who knows? But
well, that's a lot of what Jason Ricketts was saying whenever I was frustrated and telling
yeah,
y'all selling all my tackle and everything. He's like, man, it's like, forget about catching fish. Like, check out your surroundings. Like, listen
yeah,
to the water, listen to the birds, check out the scenery, and enjoy all that. And he's right.
yeah,
Uh, like, because out there on the water, you do see a lot of beautiful things, and like just nature itself is beautiful. And whenever you get focused like that, like gotta catch fish, gotta catch fish, gotta catch fish, you lose focus of like all the positive things around you.
I thought you were going to say a bunch of beautiful women in your surroundings. I was like, where are you fishing, bro? Where are you fishing? Drop me them GPS coordinates. No,
No,
but
no, my wife wouldn't let me fish there.
yeah, me either, me either. So, but I think you're just right, dude. I mean, I think some of the most memorable times on the water I have are getting out there early, watching the sun come up, through the trees. Or, I mean, one memory that sticks out to me is going up walleye fishing on Green Bay, and it's almost like fishing the ocean, right? Where all you see is water, and then all of a sudden you see this big red ball coming up, and I don't know, beautiful sunrises. I've had, you know, sitting there fishing, not catching a damn fish, and then all of a sudden a deer comes swimming through the channel I'm on. Like that's unique stuff, man. That's stuff you don't see every day. So I mean, you got to take that stuff in, and just realize, like, man, I'm lucky to be out here doing what I'm doing right now. And I think a lot of guys miss that concept. They're more worried about, you know, I just spent $600 on this rod reel combo and another $1,200 in baits, and I can't even catch a fish type mentality, which, that's not what it's necessarily all about. So,
No,
I
I mean,
mean,
I went out one time this summer with my dad, and and just so happened my buddy and his friend were going out on his John boat to the same place. Oh, and my uncle was with us, and so my buddy and his buddy were on his little V-hole John boat, and me and my dad and my uncle were on kayaks, and what. I caught like one fish all day, but I had a great time like hanging out with everybody, and my dad, he caught a bass, and then he got a hit on a whopper plopper and ended up being a turtle. And he's like, "What am I supposed to do?" Like my dad don't fish a whole lot anymore. He used to do a lot of like catfishing and stuff.
sure, sure.
He hasn't done a whole lot of bass fishing, but he's trying to hanging out with
Trying to
me.
convert them. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But he's the one that whopper plopper, and he caught a turtle, and he's like, "What am I supposed to do? Like, how do I get this thing off my line?" And so I ended up having to go to him, and I used my little uh hook remover tool
Yeah.
to get it out and drop them in the water. But that stuff like that,
That's
that
a
was
story
hilarious.
that you guys will talk about forever,
Yeah,
right?
and
That's just it. I made mention of me catching that fish out from underneath Josh's boat. Yeah, I caught a fish there, but it's more funny because of the whole experience of the day that plays into that. And I think a lot of people miss that concept because it was me, Jay, and Josh fishing like literally right next to each other all day. And that was the first time I ever hung out with Josh ever. And we had a good time. We were cutting it up, ton of laughs. Fished this new body of water. Josh had fished it before, and Jay and I had some success, and we saw Josh struggle all day, man. But when that whole scenario happened, like we all got to laugh about it, and we talk about it to this day,
yeah.
all the time. Same thing when he took his pizza break in the middle of a tournament and ended up yakking all over the place when it was 105 degrees out. Like that tournament sucked for me, but we still talk about it because of Josh throwing up his
Yeah,
pizza.
and see that right there, like that's the kind of stuff that makes memories that you're gonna
Yeah.
talk about, in the future and all that. You're not gonna talk about like, man, you remember that day I went out and caught 10 fish?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
like
Right.
no, you're gonna talk about the good story, like this
Right.
funny thing that happened out here, this
Right.
crazy thing that happened that maybe wasn't funny at the time, but it's funny now.
Sure.
And
No, totally. I mean, that's what it's about, man. Like fishing to me, man, it's the camaraderie, hanging out with buddies, um, having some laughs, cutting it up, getting outside, just having a good time. I mean, catching fish is the bonus to that, you know. I think the only time it would really be the story is when you catch a PB
yeah,
or you're, caught five pounders in an hour. Then you're talking about a story, right? But you catch 10, 14-inch fish, you're not going to write home about that. I mean, yeah, you might remember that. I went out a couple hours and banged 10 fish, but nothing big. But you're definitely going to remember the story of your old man, you know, catching turtles on top water,
and
you know.
freaking out about not knowing how to
Right,
get it off.
how to get it off, what to do with it and stuff like that. I mean,
And we got a lot of turtles around here. Another thing. When I first got my vibe, the very first time I took it out, it was me and my buddy Chris. Uh, we went out and I found like a little bitty baby turtle. Like shell probably wasn't much bigger than a quarter. Well,
yeah.
probably more like $50 or so. But like this little bitty baby turtle, and like it was right beside my kayak, and I kind of picked it up and set it inside my kayak and
Yeah.
took pictures of him. This dude's really cool. He has pretty colors and everything. I put them back, of course. I didn't
Right,
keep them or use them as bait or nothing like that. But 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 that's a memory that sticks in my head. I caught a fish that day, and you know when I think of that day, I don't think about that fish I caught. That I think that another thing with that day is a buddy of mine, like my buddy Chris, he was wanting to catch some bluegill to use as catfish bait,
yeah.
and he was using live worms, and he's not a real experienced
Sure.
fisherman either.
Yeah.
Me and him have kind of learned together along the way, but he's like trying to catch a bluegill, but he's like fishing a little deeper. I'm like, dude, throw it up there by the bank.
Right.
And he kept getting bites, and he could not get a
Get
fish
upset.
to hook on. So I had my little medium light rod. I had a little trout magnet, and
Yeah.
I tossed it over there, and immediately first cast I bring one in, and then later on we're like tied together, and he's like, I need another bluegill. I was like, hold up. So I take that trout magnet. I cast it over him, over towards, and one. There's yours. Yeah. Like stuff like that. It wasn't the fact that I was catching like the fish I caught. It was the fact that he couldn't catch these fish, and I cast out one time and bring in a fish.
Slammed one. Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's just it, man. I mean, it's all about making the memories, having a good time, and just getting out there and taking it all in, man. I mean, I would say my most memorable memory from 2019, from like just getting out there on the water, would be, this was only for like an hour, maybe hour and a half. I got my old man out on the water in the blue sky. My old man's a big dude. Like I'm a tall dude, but my old man's a big dude. He's like 6'4", like 350 pounds. He's a big dude. And he's not the most stable person. So I was like, hey, you could do this. And I put him in the blue sky, man. And legit, 20 minutes into fishing, he bangs a bass, probably a good 16, 17-inch bass. Just bam, right off the bat on the blue sky. And hearing him go, "Woo! That was awesome." I mean, that made my whole year, just seeing him enjoy what I enjoy doing. So I think that's the big thing, right? Like, so when your whole conversation went down, you're like, I'm selling all my gear. Who wants to buy my stuff? All that stuff. We're like, wait a minute. Like, no, you're not selling your stuff. Like, this is something we all love. Like, we need Milford to love it just as much, right? And I think that's a thing. You talked about that everybody encouraged you and kind of, lifted your spirits up. You're just in a slump,
And then I felt like an idiot,
What do you mean?
God, I'm like, God, I'm stupid, and like let my anger get the most of me.
Hey, dude, we all do it. Trust me. Just ask Josh. He talks to me all the time. I quit the podcast like 6 days a week. You all don't know that, and then Josh is like, you ain't doing nothing. I just get frustrated sometimes. Like I said, dude, it's with anything in life. And excuse me. Going back to first episode of this season, right, that we had with JD, we're talking about being positive, man, and just spreading that positive message, through fishing.
It was a really good episode, by the way.
Thanks, man. And that's exactly what we were talking about there, man. Like, we all get frustrated. We all want to give up at some point, you know what I mean? But when you got a great, well, I won't even say great. I'll say absolutely phenomenal group of guys and gal. Shout out Susie. Here at Paddle and Fin, you come to us, we're family, dude. So it's like, we're going to walk you through that. So,
Can't get me all teary-eyed, man.
I'll send you a box of tissues. But, that's the thing, dude. Like, I think we all have that core group that we go to. And I'm going to put this out here now. If you're new to fishing and you're struggling, dude, reach out to us. I don't care if you're a guy, a girl, you're 20 years old or 60 years old, and you're frustrated and you hit that wall, message the Paddle and Fin podcast page. We will talk you down off the ledge, my friend. And, and that's just it, dude. Like, we all get there. We all get to that point. Like, back to Mark Twain, dude. I was on the way home. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? I've spent all this money all year long, and I can't even catch one 12-inch fish. Had the winning bait tied up next to me. Like, this is all stuff going through my head. And then you got to sit back and you're like, bro, what are you even talking about right now? Like, you're just fishing. Go out and fish. Like, you're worrying too much about this other crap. So, I don't know. My message to everybody is just go out, have fun. Don't get frustrated. If you do, talk to somebody about it. Whether they fish or not. And take those bad days on the water and go, okay, well, what did I do wrong? Okay, I threw this bait. What other bait could I have thrown? Should I have fished a different kind of structure or bottom or something like that?
You can kind of say, like, okay, what didn't work, so
Yeah,
I know
right,
not to do that next time,
right,
and
exactly.
learn from that bad experience, I guess you can say.
Out of
I,
what is that saying? It's like for every one great idea or invention, I think it is, there's been 1,000 plus bad inventions or tests to
Probably more
get
than
that
that.
one good idea or that one good product or object to work right?
Yeah,
Like, it's all trial and error. I mean, that's the biggest thing. If you look at fishing as trial and error, um, and doing some research on like, you know, just general nature of bass, you can create quite a bit of success just off of that. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing I do. And I told myself years ago, like after having a bad day on the water, all right, well, this all didn't work. So what can I do different next time to change that? And then say you go out the next time and none of that new stuff works. Back to the drawing board, all right? I tried all these things. What didn't I try? All right, let's go back out and try this until finally you find that winning ticket, you know? And I mean, I will say too, like I've seen a lot of guys that have had struggles like that started keeping a journal to keep track of all the different things that they did try so they can go back and start crossing things off or go back and see what did work at this time of the year on this certain body of water that, whatever. And a good tool nowadays with technology for that, and I am no way, shape, or form associated with them, is Angler, that Angler button.
yeah.
You press it on your hat every time you catch a fish, and it takes the GPS coordinates. It'll give you the weather. You could put in the size of fish. You could put a picture of the fish, all that stuff, and that keeps a log for you, so you can go back and look at that. I know a lot of guys utilize that when they're, for instance, fishing tournaments on the same body of water, in that same year or whatever. They can go back into their angler profile and be like, well, I caught a fish here, 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 here. Okay, well, that's rocky bottom, rocky bottom, rocky bottom. I should fish rocky bottoms. So let's go out and look for that. Stuff like that, dude. It's just little things. Just don't give up. Don't get frustrated. Well, you're going to get frustrated no matter what I say. So just work through your frustrations and just don't give up, I think. And just keep grinding. And eventually, it's funny. Like I thought about it today too. Is like, when did it click for me? And I don't think it's fully clicked, but there will be a point in time where it's like this light switch goes off in your head.
Those really are fake glasses. I always
Which
thought you were joking. Like I'm just sitting here, you like stick your finger through the lens of the glass and scratch your eye. Like I,
you all thought I was playing with you.
I
There's a
thought
there's a story behind these glasses. I'll finish off the episode with the glasses story, but um, just I totally lost my train of thought there.
my bad.
Uh,
I think I kind of feel like I know kind of where you were going, and I was wanting to touch on this a little bit too.
yeah, man.
This might be this might not, I might be completely wrong, but I'm gonna go my way anyways. But uh, so on y'all's episode with JD,
Hmm.
you were talking about, I know 2019 you got so wrapped up in the tournament scene and bass fishing and everything, and yeah, you were talking about with JD like this coming year, you got to settle down a little bit,
Yeah,
do more you like, okay,
yeah,
go check out some, go after some different species. Still do your bass thing, do some local tournaments here and there or whatever, but you're gonna try out some different species and all that, and you know that's something that I'm wanting to do this year too.
Yeah.
Because I've been so focused, like every time I go fishing, I'm get so focused on, bass fishing and making it all click and come together.
Yeah, yeah,
And, you know, up until like 6 years ago, I I would like fish with nightcrawler for some bluegill
yeah, yeah, yeah.
or catfish or whatever. And I got my daughter a kayak now, and I plan on taking her out this year. And so
That's
I
cool.
I, I foresee a lot of bluegill fishing
Yeah,
coming this year. Taking her out and just enjoying time with her, and night crawlers and with a hook and a bobber, and
yeah, man.
just wearing out some bluegill.
Simple, easy fishing, laid back fishing, man. And that's the thing. Like a lot of us started like that, you know. And
Kind of overcomplicate it sometimes.
yeah, yeah, and that's the thing too. Like doing little trips like that resets everything that you had mentally that was screwing you up sometimes. You know what I mean? Like I've noticed that. Like like this past weekend I went fly fishing, and it was like, this is nice, man. Actually, it was kind of cold, but it was nice to be doing something different and just,
Yeah.
not thinking about, you know, trying to catch bass. Instead, I was trying to catch trout. But, it's nice to change it up. I didn't catch anything, but I tell you what, dude, I had an awesome day. Spent the day with two great friends, Jay Randall and my buddy Eric, and we just kicked it back, had a lot of laughs, and just enjoyed our time outside, man. And that's what it's all about.
And see, that's something that I would like to try this year too, is trout fishing. I've never, fished for trout, but the more I hear people talk about it, and the more videos will pop up on YouTube about it, I'm like, man, this seems like it'd be fun because like I'd still like to try it like with artificial lures. I know they're a little more finicky,
Yeah.
or y'all are
Well,
talking about with the eyesight and everything,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but
Well, you could still catch them with like crankbaits, inline spinners, twister tails, things like that, like smaller baits, just on a spinning rod. Like that's just as fun. I think a lot of people hear trout fishing and they immediately think fly fishing,
mhm.
and it's not the case necessarily. Like I know a guy here in southeast Wisconsin, and he does dabble in some fly fishing, and he's pretty good at it. But most of the time, he's got a lightweight spinning rod with a oh man, what are those things called? They're an inline spinner, type of inline spinner. What the hell is it? I forget the name. But 90%, I'd probably say 80% of the time, he's out there with that lightweight spinning rod, dude, and it's a gas. Like if you've never catch a trout, like when you got a hard hitting bass and it makes all the runs and the jumps and everything, and that's not every bass, but almost every trout is like that, where it's running all over the place, jumping out of the water,
Kind of
and
like a smallie.
yeah, 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 yeah. It's like a different version of a smallmouth for sure, but the trout will be smaller and it'll fight just as hard.
See,
You know?
see that's gonna be. I'm gonna make that a 2020 resolution. Go
Yeah,
find some
man.
trout.
You got some
It
good trout waters there in Tennessee too, man.
well, I one place that I've been to from time to time, just fishing off the bank for bass is supposedly that spot is where TWRA stocks trout.
Okay.
So,
They in
I,
there.
yeah, I might try that out sometime. Go up there.
Get after it, man.
But this podcast's getting a little long. I think we're over an hour now. But
Yeah, it's all good.
I know you wanted to finish on the story with your glasses, but I guess to kind of close this out, I found a quote online that I wanted to share.
Yeah,
This,
do it,
this
man.
is from a article posted on the Bassmaster website
Okay.
from Mark Davis in 2012, and it says more often than not, however, which I kind of just took this part. There was more to the
Okay.
article,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but it says more often than not, however, slumps are caused by a form of complacency. I think I said that right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said you needed inner confidence, and you do. What you don't need is overconfidence or arrogance. It's easy to get that way after a few top performances. You start to think you have everything figured out, and then your performance hits rock bottom. You look around for the problem, never realizing it's you. And so,
You
yeah,
should have started the damn podcast with that. We could have ended it right there.
But another piece of the article, he says, no matter what the cause of your slump is, however, there's one thing that'll get you out of it almost every time. Work harder than you ever have before.
Yeah.
So I felt like that
That's solid
really
advice.
went along with this.
Yeah, heck yeah, man. That's solid advice. Solid advice. So, all right. You want the glass story?
Let's hear about the glasses.
All right. All right. So this is what we'll do. If you hear this, go to the Facebook page. I'm sure Ryan will have a post up the day this goes up. Go to that post and comment Brian's blue glasses, and we're going to send you 3 paddle and fin TRC covers. So there you go. We'll do a little giveaway. Told you guys we were going to do some more giveaways, so that's what we'll do. So these glasses, right? These were actually some cheap, if you guys are watching on YouTube, some cheap sunglasses. My buddy Eric that I was fishing with this weekend got married in Michigan, right on the lake shore, and I was one of his groomsmen, and they had the little reception at this little pavilion right on the water of Lake Michigan, beach, whatever. And so it was beach theme, and they had sunglasses and I forget what else, sandals and like all kinds of beachy items that they were giving out. Well, somebody had grabbed these glasses, it might have been my wife, and they dropped them and a lens popped out. I'm like, dude, you could rock those. Now, mind you, this was a wedding. Weddings are usually the only time I really drink adult beverages. And I was like, give me those glasses. I'll rock these. And everybody made fun of me because I only had one lens. So I popped the other lens out, and then I wore the glasses the rest of the night with no lenses. And just recently, my wife was going through cleaning some stuff up, and she was like, these are garbage, right? And I'm like, oh, hell no, those are my glasses, yo. You don't remember those glasses? So I've been wearing them, and it throws everybody off because they're like, dude, I didn't know you had glasses. And I'm like, yeah, it's all good. And then I'll put my finger through like the frame, from the inside out. And they're like, what the hell? So it's just kind of funny. And then my buddy Eric was here this past weekend, and I was like, dude, you remember these glasses? He's like, what are those from? I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. It was your wedding day. Mind you, we had bought $180 or $200 and some bottle of champagne. It was huge. It was like a gallon and a half of champagne that we had bought, and we were passing around the reception. So he was pretty schnockered up, and he's like, dude, that's right. Those are for my wedding. So it was kind of funny. They got sentimental value. I won't let them go. So
yeah, I dig it.
I dig it. I dig it.
Look like they need some tape around the.
Yeah, I thought about that, dude. Putting like some electrical tape, like right by the nose bridge there. Yeah, look like Wild Thing from Major League.
That's more like white tape.
Yeah,
nerdy.
I could do that too.
You could pull off the nerdy look pretty good.
I could do that. Yeah, I'll start changing it up like every week. I'll have like different colored tape on there or something. So. But, yeah, that's the glasses story, so you all know. But, yeah, go to the Facebook page, comment Brian's blue glasses, and we will hook you up with some TRC covers. So
first person to comment.
Yeah, get on it. So, well, thanks for having me on, man. I think this is good conversation. I hope everybody can grasp something from it next time they're feeling down and out about their fishing skills and all that good stuff, man.
Yeah, I think that we put out our hearts on this episode.
Yeah, buddy.
Got in our feels a little bit.
Hearts on our sleeves, brother. That's what it's about, man. Living and learning from each other, and it'll only help make us all better anglers.
Right on. All right, well, I guess tight lines, smooth paddling.
Yeah, buddy. Go check out the website, guys. Paddle, the letter N, and fin.com. Also, check out YouTube, youtube.com/paddle and fin. If you got a question, comment, want to hear from a future guest, feel free to email us at paddle, the letter N, and fin@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media. We're doing giveaways, announcements, things like that at Facebook and Instagram at Paddle and Fin. Shout out to our show supporters, Rocktown Adventures, Loveland Canoe and Kayak, Hammered Lures, Fish Mob Lures, TRC Covers, Ketch Products. Go to ketchproducts.com. You could put the Paddle and Fin logo right on your catch board. Don't forget to go over and pick up your JigMasters Jigs. Use promo code PNF20 and save 20% today. Don't forget to rate and review the podcast on whatever platform you're listening to. It helps grow the audience, helps others find our podcast. So please drop a 5-star rating in on the podcast platform you're listening on. Don't forget about the recycled plastics program, you guys. Take your used plastic baits, put them in an envelope, mail them to the address in the show notes. Our man Eric Richards at Hammered Lures melts those down, makes new baits, and donates them to various chapters of Heroes on the Water.